The story of George Armstrong Custer's last stand at the Battle of Little Bighorn remains one of the most debated and fascinating episodes in American history. It is a tale of leadership, miscalculation, and the brutal realities of warfare. Central to this narrative is not only Custer himself but also his subordinate, Colonel Marcus Reno, whose decisions during the battle have sparked controversy for more than a century. Often overshadowed by the dramatic downfall of Custer, Reno's role deserves a closer look. His choices, made in the heat of battle, raise profound questions about leadership, military strategy, and how history assigns blame. On June 25, 1876, Custer and his 7th Cavalry embarked on what they believed would be a decisive campaign against the Lakota Sioux and Cheyenne tribes in the Montana Territory. The U.S. government, driven by a relentless pursuit of expansion, sought to subdue these tribes and assert control over land earmarked for settlers. Custer, known for his boldness, led his men with the confidence of a commander who had rarely tasted defeat. However, the events that unfolded on that fateful day would soon turn his overconfidence into one of the greatest military disasters in American history. As Custer's forces moved toward the Native American encampment along the Little Bighorn River, they did so with a sense of invulnerability. Yet, this confidence quickly gave way to chaos when they encountered an unexpectedly large and well-prepared native force. Custer had grossly underestimated the strength and resolve of the warriors who stood ready to defend their territory, led by formidable leaders such as Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. As the battle began, the cavalry's initial advance met with fierce resistance. Meanwhile, Colonel Marcus Reno was tasked with a critical role in Custer's battle plan. Commanding a contingent of about 175 men, Reno was ordered to attack from the southern flank, a maneuver intended to divide the native forces and create an opening for Custer's main assault. However, Reno's experience on the battlefield was far different from what Custer had envisioned. As his men approached the encampment, they were quickly overwhelmed by a hail of bullets from native warriors. Facing unexpected ferocity, Reno made the decision to pull his forces back to a defensive position on higher ground, a decision that has since been endlessly scrutinized. Renos retreat has been a subject of intense debate among historians. Some argue that Reno acted wisely in choosing to withdraw, realizing that his small force was vastly outnumbered and that to continue the assault would result in needless casualties. Given the circumstances, retreating to a defensible position could be seen as a pragmatic decision, aimed at preserving the lives of his men. Others, however, view Reno's decision in a far harsher light. They argue that his retreat isolated Custer, leaving him to face the full brunt of the native forces alone, and that a more aggressive stance from Reno could have provided the support Custer needed to turn the tide of the battle. The retreat itself was chaotic. As Reno's forces fell back under fire, they experienced significant losses. The sound of gunfire and the screams of wounded men filled the air, creating an atmosphere of confusion and fear. Reno's decision to retreat may have spared his men from immediate destruction, but it also meant that Custer was left with fewer troops to support his direct assault. The lack of coordination between the two commanders would prove to be a fatal flaw. Custer, in the meantime, pressed forward with his attack. Undeterred by Reno's withdrawal, he divided his remaining forces into 3 separate columns, a move that would later be viewed as one of his most critical errors. This fragmentation left each group vulnerable to the concentrated attacks of the Native American warriors, who quickly realized that Custer's forces were not acting in unison. The failure to communicate effectively between Custer, Reno, and another key officer, Captain Frederick Benteen, further compounded the disorganization. As Custer's men advanced, they were soon overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and tactical prowess of the native forces. Isolated from one another, Custer's columns were systematically surrounded and decimated. The result was a catastrophic defeat. By the end of the battle, Custer and more than 200 of his men lay dead, while Reno and Benteen managed to hold out in defensive positions until reinforcements arrived 2 days later. The breakdown in communication between Custer and Reno remains one of the most puzzling aspects of the battle. Why did the two commanders fail to coordinate their movements more effectively? Had Reno pressed his attack, or had Custer waited for Bentine's reinforcements before advancing? The outcome might have been different. Instead, the fragmented nature of their assault played directly into the hands of the Native American warriors, who took full advantage of the disarray within the 7th Cavalry. Reno's decision to retreat, while controversial, must be viewed in the context of the battlefield. He was operating under extreme pressure, with little information about the overall situation. To call his actions cowardly would be an oversimplification. Rather, they were the decisions of a commander caught in an untenable situation, forced to choose between risking the annihilation of his men or pulling back to fight another day. History often judges military leaders harshly, especially when their decisions lead to defeat. But Reno's retreat may have been the most prudent course of action given the circumstances. However, the broader failure of leadership at Little Bighorn extends beyond Reno's actions. Custer's decision to divide his forces, his underestimation of the Native American warriors, and his failure to wait for reinforcements were all critical errors that contributed to the disaster. The battle, often seen as a symbol of Custer's recklessness, was in fact the product of a series of miscalculations at multiple levels of command. As we reflect on the events of Little Bighorn, it becomes clear that no single individual can bear the full weight of responsibility for the defeat. Custer's overconfidence, Reno's retreat, and the broader failures of communication and coordination all played a role in shaping the outcome. The battle was a tragic collision of cultures, with the Native American warriors fighting to defend their way of life against the encroaching forces of U.S. expansionism. While Custer's defeat has often been cast as a cautionary tale of hubris, the reality is far more complex. In the end, Marcus Reno's role in the Battle of Little Bighorn is a reminder of the difficult decisions that military leaders must make in the heat of battle. His retreat may have saved lives, but it also contributed to one of the most infamous defeats in American history. As with many historical events, the truth of what happened that day is layered with nuance and complexity. Both Custer and Reno were products of their time, operating in a world where victory and defeat could hinge on a single decision. And while Custer's name has become synonymous with failure, the real story of Little Bighorn is one of shared responsibility and the unpredictable nature of warfare.